I found out I had a daughter the day I buried my mother. Standing at the edge of a sunken grave, tattoo tied around my throat, trying to remember how to breathe, when a girl with dark hair and wary eyes walked up, slipped her hand into mine, and said, "Hi, Dad." And just like that, the world tilted. My name's Jack, 41 years old. The good son, according to my mother, the one who stayed close to home, who fixed her back porch when the boards went soft, who called every Sunday even when there wasn't much to say. I didn't think life had many surprises left for me. Not after burying my old man, surviving my divorce, and watching the only dog I ever really loved limp off into the sunset 5 years back. Life had sanded me down to something simple, predictable, safe. I was okay with that. Until she showed up. The funeral was what you'd expect. A dozen well-meaning casseroles, too many flowers in cheap vases, and that heavy, sticky feeling that grief leaves in a room long after the mourners have gone home. I gave the eulogy. Talked about how Mom loved morning coffee and late-night TV dramas, how she believed in tough love and second chances but never third ones. I made people laugh a little, cry a little. I thought, afterward, I could finally start moving forward. And then the girl came up. Maybe 15, 16 years old. Wearing a black dress a size too small, a denim jacket over it like armor. She had my mother's stubborn chin and my father's hazel eyes, but more than that, she had something I recognized deep in my bones, the way she squared her shoulders, like she knew the world owed her nothing and she was going to walk through it anyway. She slid her hand into mine. Small. Cold. Her nails painted chipped blue. And she said it. Dad. Not Mister. Not Sir. Dad. At first, I thought she must be confused. Maybe she mistook me for someone else, an uncle, a friend, a neighbor from some forgotten summer. But then she looked up at me, and I swear to you, it was like staring into a mirror that skipped 2 decades. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Not shock. Not anger. Just this hollow, gaping silence. The people around us kept moving, dropping roses on the casket, murmuring prayers, dabbing their eyes, oblivious to the nuclear bomb that just went off on the edge of the cemetery. I finally croaked out, "What did you say?" She blinked, twisted the hem of her jacket sleeve. "My name's Lily," she said. "Mom said, if anything ever happened to Grandma, I was supposed to find you." Grandma. Mom. Pieces started clicking together in my head, jagged and clumsy. I hadn't heard from Melissa, my high school girlfriend, in almost 17 years. Last I knew, she moved 2 towns over, got married to a guy who worked construction, had a kid. But that couldn't be right, right? Because if Lily was mine, if she was really mine, that meant Melissa had been carrying this secret almost half my lifetime. I pulled away, just slightly. Not enough to hurt her. Just enough that the space between us could start swallowing the questions I wasn't ready to say out loud. "Where's your mom?" I asked, voice raw. Her mouth tightened. "She passed away last month. Cancer." Said it like she'd rehearsed it. Like she'd said it so many times already that she knew how to keep her voice steady now. I staggered back a step. Grief slamming into grief, like waves in a hurricane. "And she told you to find me?" Lily nodded. Pulled a crumpled letter out of her jacket pocket. Held it out with shaking hands. She said, "You deserve to know." I stared at the letter like it might bite me. Like it might explode if I touched it wrong. I didn't take it. Not yet. Instead, I looked at this girl. This stranger with my nose and my mother's stubborn tilt of the chin. And realized that life hadn't just thrown me a curveball. It had rewritten the whole damn game. Somewhere behind us, the priest said the final words. Ashes to ashes. Dust to dust. And me? I just stood there, holding hands with a daughter I didn't know existed, realizing that I hadn't just lost my mother today. I'd gained a whole other life I wasn't ready for. Maybe I never would be. But ready or not, it had already begun. I didn't open the letter at the cemetery. Couldn't. Not with the dirt still fresh over Mom's grave and the sky pressing down like it wanted to crush me. Instead, I tucked it into my jacket pocket, nodded at Lily, stiff, awkward, lost, and muttered something about needing to get to the reception. I don't even remember what I said, to be honest. Just needed to move. Needed to breathe. Lily followed me. No hesitation. Like a kid who knew she had nowhere else to go. The reception was in the church basement. Folding chairs, finger foods, those little plastic cups of lemonade that taste more like regret than citrus. People hugged me, patted my back, said Mom was a hell of a woman. I nodded, thanked them, tried not to glance at the girl hovering by the wall, the girl nobody knew how to place. My sister, June, caught me at the buffet table. She was frowning, her plate untouched. "Who's the kid?" she asked. I hesitated, long enough that her frown deepened. "Friend of Mom's," I lied. The words tasted sour. June nodded, but not convincingly. "She's sharp, my sister. Always has been." We got through the reception somehow. The small talk, the condolences, the quiet shuffling out into the cold evening. When it was finally just me, Lily, and the echo of Mom's absence, I turned to her. "Come on," I said. She didn't ask where we were going. Just picked up her backpack, a worn thing with a busted zipper and a safety pin holding the strap, and followed me to the truck. We drove in silence. Through town, past the old diner, past the school where I used to shoot hoops after detention, past the hospital where I was born. Life, unchanged. Except for everything that mattered. My house was small, a one-story fixer-upper I'd never gotten around to fully fixing. Peeling paint on the porch. A screen door that creaked like an old man's knees. I unlocked the door, pushed it open, and gestured her inside. She stepped over the threshold like she wasn't sure she was allowed. And maybe she wasn't. I wasn't sure either. I pointed to the couch. "Sit." She sat, hands folded in her lap, eyes wide and wary. I took the chair across from her, the chair Dad used to sit in when he wanted to lay down the law. Funny how those things stick. I pulled the letter out of my pocket, flattened it against my knee. It was handwritten, blue ink, shaky in places. I recognized Melissa's handwriting immediately. Sharp and slanted, like she was always in a hurry. I read it once, twice. It said everything and nothing all at once. "Jack, I'm sorry. You didn't know about her because I thought it was better that way. I thought you deserved a clean start. I was wrong. She's yours. She's smart and stubborn and brave, just like you. If you're reading this, it's because I can't be there to tell you myself. Take care of her, if you can. She deserves better than being left behind twice. M." I folded the letter carefully, set it on the coffee table between us. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, Lily said, "She told me about you. A little." "What did she say?" "That you were good," she said quietly. "That you didn't know." I leaned back, feeling the old recliner groan under the weight of everything I wasn't saying. "How long have you known about me?" I asked. "Since I was 12, she said. Matter of fact. Like it was normal. Like it didn't rip a hole straight through me. "She said you had your own life," Lily added. "She didn't want to mess it up." I laughed, low and humorless. "My life isn't exactly something you could ruin," I said. It wasn't a life, really. More like a waiting room. And now here she was, walking straight through the door I didn't even know I had locked. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I had no idea what came next. Was I supposed to take her in? Find her a place to stay? Send her off to relatives I hadn't seen since the Clinton administration? I rubbed my hands over my face. "Where are you staying?" I asked. She shrugged. "Mom said you'd know what to do." Of course she did. Just drop the grenade and walk away. I stood up, paced the room. Lily watched me with those same hazel eyes, patient and scared all at once. Finally, I turned back to her. "You hungry?" She nodded, small and solemn. I went to the kitchen, dug out 2 bowls, poured cereal because that's all I had. We ate in silence. 2 strangers, bound by blood, tied together by the wreckage of a woman we both loved and resented in the same breath. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and looked up at me. "I don't need much," she said. "Just somewhere to be. Somewhere to be. Not somewhere to belong. Not somewhere to be loved. Just to exist." And God help me, I felt something crack open in my chest. Something raw and aching and real. Because if there was one thing I understood better than anything, it was what it meant to need somewhere to be. Somewhere that didn't give up on you. I nodded. "You can stay here," I said. "At least for now." It wasn't a promise. It wasn't forever. But it was a beginning. And sometimes, beginnings don't look like fireworks or grand gestures. Sometimes, they look like 2 bowls of cereal eaten in silence. Sometimes, they look like a broken man and a scared girl, sitting across a battered coffee table, trying to figure out how to build a bridge out of nothing but a letter and a second chance. The first few days with Lily were strange. Not bad. Not easy. Just the kind of strange that feels like moving into a house someone else built. The walls familiar enough to walk through, but every corner whispering, "You don't live here yet." She kept mostly to herself. Set up camp in the spare bedroom, the one that used to be my office, until it slowly filled with junk I never got around to sorting. She didn't ask for much. A clean blanket. A working lamp. Privacy. I gave her all 3, not because I was trying to be noble, but because I didn't know what else to offer. The first morning, I caught her standing in the kitchen, holding a frying pan like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to use it. I told her the kitchen was hers too. She nodded once, curt and careful, like she was tucking the permission away for later. She made eggs, burnt them, ate them anyway without a word. I made coffee, burnt it, drank it anyway without a word. Somehow, that felt like a truce. We didn't talk about the big things at first. Not about her mother. Not about why Melissa never told me. Not about what Lily had lost or what she might have found. Instead, we talked about small things. School, she hated it. Music, she loved it. Mostly old stuff. Real guitars, real drums, nothing polished within an inch of its life. Books, she didn't trust them unless they had a little sadness tucked between the pages. Same as me. It scared me, sometimes, how much of myself I saw in her, like my reflection had learned to walk and talk and slam doors when she thought I wasn't being fair. She was sharp. Quicker than I expected. She picked up on things when I was tired, when I was faking patience, when I was standing in the doorway watching her sleep because I still didn't quite believe she was real. One night, about a week in, I found her sitting on the porch steps, knees tucked to her chest, hoodie pulled up over her head. I sat down beside her. Didn't speak at first. Just listened to the crickets and the hum of streetlights. Finally, she broke the silence. "Were you mad at her?" she asked, voice small. I didn't have to ask who she meant. I thought about it. Turned it over in my mind like a stone I wasn't ready to let go of. "Yeah," I said finally. "For a long time." She nodded, like she expected that. I leaned back on my hands, stared up at the stars. They looked different, somehow sharper, like someone had polished the sky. "But not anymore?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, can't stay mad at a ghost." She didn't say anything for a while. Then, "Me neither." It hit me then, not in a thunderclap way, but in that slow, heavy way that rearranges the furniture of your soul. We weren't just mourning Melissa separately. We were mourning her together, in our own broken, jagged ways. I looked over at her, this stubborn little stranger who shared my blood, my frown, maybe even my stupid habit of kicking at gravel when she was thinking too hard. And I realized something. She wasn't looking for a replacement. She wasn't looking for a hero. She was just looking for someone to stay. Someone who wouldn't bolt when the grief got messy. Someone who wouldn't love her like a project, or an obligation, or a maybe. Just someone who'd sit on the porch with her under a sky full of mistakes and say, "I'm still here." And if there was one thing I knew how to do, even after all the ways I'd failed, even after all the ways life had sucker punched me, it was this: stay. The next morning, I called the school. Explained, as best I could, that Lily would be enrolling late. I braced for the questions, the why, the where's her guardian papers, the can we speak to her previous caregiver. They came, as expected. And one by one, I answered them. Because this wasn't temporary. This wasn't, until I figured something else out. This was my kid. My responsibility. My second chance to be the kind of man I thought life had stopped needing me to be. That afternoon, we sat at the kitchen table, filling out forms. Emergency contacts. Allergies. Hobbies. On the line that said parent/guardian, I hesitated. Lily tapped the paper with her pen, a small, wry smile playing at the corner of her mouth. "You can just put Dad," she said. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like she hadn't shattered my entire life a week ago with that one word. I wrote it, slow and careful. "Dad, Jack Carter." Seeing it in ink made it real in a way nothing else had. She slid the form back toward her without reading it. Trusted me to get it right. That was the day I realized this wasn't about blood or paperwork or shared DNA. It was about the choice I made, every day, to show up. And that's when I knew. Family isn't just who you're tied to. It's who you fight for. Even when you're scared. Even when you're lost. Even when you didn't see it coming. Especially then. You ever notice how the first real test of anything always comes when you least expect it? For me, it came 3 weeks into this new life. Right when I was starting to think maybe, just maybe, we were finding some kind of rhythm. It was a Wednesday. Ordinary in every way that mattered. Cold coffee, traffic, a broken shoelace I didn't have time to fix, until I got a call from the school. It was the vice principal. Voice clipped and polite in that way that made my gut twist before she even finished the first sentence. "Mr. Carter, there's been an incident involving your daughter." I don't remember much after that. Just the rush of grabbing my jacket, keys rattling in my hands, heart pounding loud enough that I couldn't hear anything but the word daughter. When I got there, Lily was sitting outside the office, arms crossed, face blank in that way only a teenager can manage when they're balancing on the edge of fight or flight. The principal waved me into her office. Turned out Lily had gotten into a fight. Not a shouting match. Not a heated argument. A real fight. With fists. Another girl, bigger, older, a junior, had said something about Lily's mom. Something cruel, something I won't repeat here because it doesn't deserve more air than it already got. Lily snapped. Went at her like a storm breaking loose from a clear sky. The principal explained all this in that slow, careful tone people use when they're trying to figure out if they're about to step on a landmine. She finished by saying Lily was suspended for 3 days. Standard protocol, she said. You're lucky we're not pressing charges. I nodded. Signed the paperwork with a hand that didn't quite stop shaking. Then I turned to Lily. She didn't cry, didn't flinch, just stood up, backpack slung over one shoulder, waiting for whatever punishment was coming next. We walked to the truck in silence. The whole ride home, 15 minutes through the graying streets of town, neither of us spoke. Not until we pulled into the driveway. I killed the engine. Turned to her. Want to tell me what happened? She stared out the window, jaw tight, eyes burning. Finally, she said. She called Mama Junkie. Her voice cracked on the last word. I closed my eyes. Because yeah, Melissa had her battles. Painkillers after a bad car wreck. Whispers in town that she wasn't always clean. I hadn't been around for it. Hadn't seen it firsthand. But I didn't have to. I knew enough. I opened my eyes and looked at her. You can't do that, kid, I said, voice soft. She deserved it. Lily shot back, fierce and wounded. Maybe she did, I said. But you're the one who pays for it. She bit her lip hard enough that I thought she might draw blood. And then, so quietly I almost missed it, she said. I thought if I fought back, it would make it not true. There it was. Not just the anger. Not just the grief. The shame. The kind that digs deep and convinces you you're broken because someone else couldn't stay whole. I reached across the cab of the truck. Put my hand on her shoulder. She stiffened. Then, slowly, leaned into it. Listen to me, Lily, I said. Who your mom was, the good, the bad, the everything in between, that's not on you. None of it. You don't have to carry it like it's yours. She swallowed. Nodded once, sharp and hard, like she was trying to weld the words into her ribs. We sat there until the cold started creeping in through the cracked windows. Finally, I said, come on, let's go inside. She hesitated. I'm sorry, she said. And God, that hit harder than anything. I shook my head. You don't have to be sorry for hurting. We got out. Went inside. I made grilled cheese, because that's what my mom used to make on the days when the world felt like too much. We sat at the kitchen table, eating in silence. Not the heavy, strained kind from the beginning, but a different kind. A healing kind. After a while, Lily said, Are you mad? I looked at her. At the girl who fought because she didn't know how else to protect the pieces of herself she was terrified to lose. At the daughter who barely knew me but still trusted me enough to ask. And I told her the truth. No, I'm proud of you. She blinked. For fighting. For staying, I said. Because that's what mattered. Not the fists. Not the mistakes. The fact that she was still here. Still trying. Still choosing to get back up. Later that night, I found the suspension letter on the counter. Folded it up. Tucked it into a drawer, not because I wanted to hide it, but because it didn't matter anymore. Not compared to the girl asleep in the next room. The girl who didn't need perfect, just needed someone who wouldn't leave when things got ugly. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I realized something. I wasn't scared anymore. Not of the responsibility. Not of the past. Not of the weight of it all. Because love, real love, isn't about what you can handle when it's easy. It's about who you show up for when it's hard. And this time, I was staying. It was a Sunday afternoon when the past came knocking again. Literally. I was patching a leak in the kitchen, one of those dumb little projects you put off until it's pouring rain and you're cursing yourself at 9 a.m. when there was a knock at the door. Lily was sprawled out on the couch, flipping through a math book with the kind of resentment only a teenager can muster. I wiped my hands on a rag and opened the door. It was a man I didn't recognize, late 50s maybe, gray creeping into his hair, suit too nice for our dusty little town. He smiled, the kind of smile you don't trust. Mr. Carter? He asked. Yeah, I'm Thomas Reed. I was a friend of Melissa's. The name didn't ring a bell. Neither did the face. But the way Lily stiffened when she saw him told me everything I needed to know. I stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door mostly closed behind me. What do you want? He didn't waste time. I'm here about Lily. Specifically, her inheritance. My gut tightened. What inheritance? Thomas reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope. Inside, legal papers. Trust fund documents. Accounts I didn't even know Melissa had. She'd set aside money for Lily. Not a fortune, but more than enough to cover college, a first car, maybe even a down payment on a house someday. She wanted to make sure Lily was taken care of, Thomas said, voice smooth and practiced. But there are stipulations. Conditions. What kind of conditions? I asked. He hesitated. She was worried, he said carefully, about who might end up responsible for Lily. She wanted assurances. Stability. I bristled. You saying I'm not stable? Thomas smiled again, thin, professional. Just that guardianship isn't automatic, Mr. Carter, Thomas said. Because Melissa never updated the records, there's no official custody established. You'll need to petition the court. Prove it. The old anger flared up before I could stop it. The anger that said, how dare you? How dare you show up at my door, after everything, and act like you get a say? But when I looked back at Lily, hunched over her book, pretending not to listen but clenching her pen so hard her knuckles turned white, I swallowed it down. This wasn't about pride. This was about her. What happens if I don't? I asked, low and steady. Thomas shrugged. She goes into the system. Foster care. Group home, most likely. The words hit like a hammer. No, I said. No way in hell. He handed me a card. My office number. Call if you have questions. Then he left, just like that. Like he hadn't just set a bomb ticking under our feet. I closed the door, leaned my forehead against it for a second, breathed in, breathed out. When I turned around, Lily was standing there, watching me. Is he taking me away? She asked. Her voice was small, terrified. I crossed the room in 2 steps and knelt in front of her. No, I said fiercely. I'm not letting anyone take you. She bit her lip, eyes shining. You sure? She whispered. Absolutely. Because I was. More sure than I'd ever been about anything. I called a lawyer that night. Explained everything. She was kind, firm but kind, and said we had a strong case. Said the courts favored biological parents, especially ones who had stepped up the way I had. It would take paperwork, interviews, proof of income and home stability, and about a dozen other hoops to jump through. But it was possible. It was ours to fight for. Over the next few weeks, we filled out forms, met with social workers, sat through awkward home visits where strangers peeked into my fridge and made notes about my domestic environment. Lily hated it. I hated it. But we did it anyway. Together. Some nights, she would sit at the kitchen table while I filled out forms, tapping her pen against her notebook. Why didn't she just tell you? She asked once, out of nowhere. I didn't have a good answer. Maybe Melissa thought she was protecting me. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she just didn't believe in herself enough to believe we could make it work. I shrugged. People do dumb things when they're scared, I said. Lily nodded. Didn't push. But I could see it. The way the question sat heavy in her chest anyway. One night, after a long meeting with our lawyer, I found her in the backyard, sitting on the old swing set, swaying gently. The stars were out again, the same cold, sharp ones we sat under that first night. I walked out, hands stuffed in my jacket pockets, sat down on the ground beside her. She didn't look at me, just said, you don't have to do this. I frowned. Do what? Fight so hard. I leaned back, looked up at the sky. I know, I said, but I want to. She was quiet for a long time. Then, so soft I almost missed it, she said. No one's ever done that for me before. My throat tightened. I wanted to say a lot of things. That she was worth it. That she wasn't a burden. That fighting for her felt less like an obligation and more like breathing. But I kept it simple. Get used to it, I said. Because this wasn't a one-time thing. This was a lifetime thing. This was love, stubborn and battered and fierce. The kind that didn't walk away when the papers got messy or the past got loud. The kind that stayed. A few weeks later, we got the call. The papers were finalized. Guardianship awarded. No conditions. No system. Just us. Just family. I didn't cry. Not then. But that night, when Lily fell asleep on the couch watching some terrible zombie movie, I sat there and watched her breathe. Watched the way her face softened in sleep. And I let myself feel it. The weight. The relief. The wonder. This girl, this daughter I didn't know I had, was mine now. Not by accident, not by default, but by choice, by fight, by love. You'd think after all the paperwork, the court dates, the late nights filling out forms I could barely understand, there'd be a moment. A big, cinematic moment. Someone slamming a stamp on a piece of paper and saying, "Congratulations, you're a family now." But there wasn't. It was an email from the lawyer. Guardianship granted. Effective immediately. No balloons. No applause. Just a few lines of legal jargon that changed everything. When I told Lily, she didn't say anything at first. Just looked at me with those big hazel eyes, the ones that never stay dry for long, even when she tried to act tough. Then she nodded. Once. Sharp and sure. Like she was planting a flag in the ground between us. Later that night, we celebrated the only way we knew how. Cheap burgers. Root beers. Sitting in the back of my pickup under the stars, feet dangling over the edge like kids who didn't know better. Lily leaned her head against my shoulder, casual, but heavy with meaning. Like she wasn't afraid to ask for comfort anymore. We didn't talk much. Didn't need to. The quiet between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was stitched together with all the things we didn't have to say out loud. I thought about Mom, watching from wherever she ended up. Wondered if she was proud. Wondered if she was laughing at how I once swore up and down I wasn't cut out to be a parent. Turns out, nobody's cut out for it. You just show up. Day after day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. A few weeks after that, Lily started calling me Dad, without flinching. Not every time. Sometimes it was still Jack when she was mad, or when she thought she needed distance. But more and more, it was Dad. The first time she said it casually, not like a question, but like a fact, was when she was leaving for school one morning. She grabbed her backpack, tossed a "Bye, Dad," over her shoulder, and walked out the door like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stood there, holding my coffee, smiling like an idiot. Because that little word? It meant everything. It meant she was staying. It meant she believed I would too. We built a life after that. Small at first. One late-night pizza run. One argument over curfew. One repaired bicycle tire. Brick by brick, we built something solid. I didn't try to be her friend. Didn't try to replace what she lost. I just stayed. Through the hard mornings when grief grabbed her by the throat. Through the angry afternoons when math homework made her slam doors and shout that she didn't need anyone. Through the quiet nights when she would find me out on the porch and sit down beside me without saying a word. We stayed. One evening, maybe a year after she first called me Dad at the funeral, she came into the kitchen while I was wrestling with a pot roast that refused to cook evenly. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips. "You're getting better at that," she said. "Lying to me won't save you from doing the dishes." I shot back. She laughed, this low, warm sound that filled the kitchen better than any music. Then she sobered a little, cleared her throat. "You're good at this," she said. Real quiet. I turned, wiping my hands on a dish towel. "At what?" She shrugged. "You know. The whole. That thing." I looked at her, really looked at her. At the girl who taught me that love isn't about being ready. It's about showing up, anyway. "Thanks, kid," I said, voice thicker than I wanted it to be. She ducked her head, embarrassed by her own sincerity. But before she left the room, she said one more thing. The thing that tied it all together. The thing that made every broken piece of my life make sense. "I'm glad you're mine," she whispered. And then she was gone, backpack slung over one shoulder, math book under her arm, slamming the screen door behind her the way she always did. I stood there for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to do next, but because for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly where I belonged. Right here. Home isn't four walls and a roof. It's a girl with a chip nail polish, a crooked smile, and a heart big enough to let you in even after the world told her not to trust anyone. It's burned eggs, late-night movies, and stubborn fights over nothing. It's second chances wrapped in root beer and porch swings. Home is showing up. Home is staying. Home is her.